All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're putting on our scholar's robes to track some incredibly ancient cosmic shifts and dive deep into one of the absolute most fascinating entities in our world's history, Tharos Venn. We're going to look closely at exactly how the Master of Mountains subverts classic demonic power through the immutable, unyielding laws of nature. If you've ever wondered what happens when an unstoppable demonic force meets an immovable object, well, you are definitely in the right place. We're tracking how Tharos Venn uses the ancient law of height to directly challenge demonic crowns. And he doesn't do it with armies, he does it with sheer altitude. So, whether you're studying ancient lore or you're just trying to understand how immovable persistence outlasts flashy ambition, there's a whole lot to unpack here.
Here's a quick look at our syllabus for today. First, the origins of natural law, then defining mountain law, followed by the mountain court's judgment, the burden of ascent, a parliament of nature, and finally, confronting demonic crowns. Let's get into it.
Section 1. Origins of Natural Law.
To really grasp the power of the mountain, we first have to rewind. Way back to the shape of the world before the very concept of altitude even existed. The old natural stories say that before mountains had names, the world was basically flat with fear. Rivers just wandered without banks, forests grew without borders, and storms crossed the land without ever being forced to rise. But then, ancient pressure caused the earth to fold. The very first peak broke the sky. And here's the kicker. That peak didn't speak, and it didn't attack. It just stood there. But by simply standing, it changed everything. Clouds broke against it to become rain. Rivers were born from its snow. Animals and humans learned routes and distance. Even the demons, watching from their sealed courts, suddenly realized the mortal world contained powers that had absolutely nothing to do with desire or command, or fear or worship. Mountains didn't conquer a flat world of fear. They simply stood up, forcing everything else to recognize boundaries and consequences.
Now, this massive cosmic shift triggered the awakening of our central figure, Tharos Venn. The lore says he awakened the very moment that first peak cast its first shadow. Tharos often appears to demons as this towering figure of layered granite and snow, wearing a ring of clouds instead of a traditional crown. And he awakened not with a hunger for rule, but with a deep need to establish boundaries. He knew beings would inevitably try to conquer the high places, so he became the witness of Ascent. He's the force that allows climbing, but severely punishes arrogance. The mountain doesn't forbid you from going up, right? But it absolutely forbids false ascent, basically rising without humility, preparation, or respect. Moving right along to Section 2, Defining Mountain Law. So let's define exactly what mountain law is. While demonic power usually works by spreading outward, conquering more land, gaining more followers, extending influence, mountain law dictates that some power rises. It waits patiently above the reach of banners. Mountain power challenges demonic power by outright refusing scale. See, Tharos Venn doesn't fight throne against throne. Instead, he simply makes every single throne look temporary. A demon king among the 72 might command vast, terrifying legions, but no legion on earth can force a mountain to kneel. Think about it this way. Demonic power relies heavily on temporary shadows spreading outward. It depends on distance, mystery, and cultivating fear. But mountain power is a completely different beast. It relies on enduring, unchanging stone rising upward. The law of height asserts that the higher a being rises, the more visible its shadow becomes. On a mountain, every crown is seen from below and above at the exact same time. There is literally nowhere for grandeur to hide its consequences.
So while demonic ambition acts like a frantic, temporary shadow fighting desperately for rank, mountain power is patient, unmoving stone that demands absolute accountability based on height. Because in mountain philosophy, height isn't about superiority, it's about accountability. All right, Section 3, the Mountain Court's Judgment. The court of Tharos Venn has no trumpets, no thrones, no hierarchy of rank. Instead, it is made entirely of presences. You've got the hollow echoes, which will throw your spoken lies right back to you in altered forms until you're forced to actually hear your own dishonesty. Then you have the glacier mothers, moving agonizingly slowly across centuries just to grind arrogance into valleys. The old passes are perhaps the most terrifying because they close without actually moving at all. They simply make travelers lose their courage, their direction, or their trust. And then there are the snow witnesses, who remember footprints and decide exactly which ones are going to vanish. Unlike demonic courts that are built on bribery and rank, this court judges climbers strictly by self-measurement. The mountain court doesn't punish weakness. It punishes pretending that weakness isn't there.
Section 4. The Burden of Ascent.
This brings us to what might be the most lethal tool in Tharos Venn's arsenal. When he invokes the burden of ascent, the literal mechanics of elevation and pressure shift. Every single climbing being must physically and mentally carry the real, unmitigated weight of their own ambition. Climbers aren't defeated by being struck down with lightning or fire. They're defeated because they are made entirely too honest to continue moving. If a demon like Paimon tries to climb, he feels the crushing physical weight of all his knowledge that he's left unused for mercy. When this burden is invoked, you simply cannot take another step upward unless you admit exactly what it is you carry. Take the human climber Oryn Khar as a perfect case study. He attempted the climb carrying borrowed demonic influences to make himself stronger. Vassago's wisdom, Belial's ember of fire, Paimon's knowledge, and Andromalius's sense of justice. But Tharos doesn't just strip these powers away from him. No, he makes Oryn walk until each borrowed gift becomes heavy enough to reveal its inherent danger. Oryn is forced to realize that Vassago's wisdom can curdle into arrogance. Belial's ember can become tyranny, and Andromalius's justice can easily become sheer cruelty. Oryn literally has to abandon his reliance on these borrowed demonic gifts, or else they'll crush him under the weight of his own arrogance. The summit isn't a reward for strength. It's a place where self-deception literally has zero oxygen. When demonic ego arrives with blazing fire and massive legions, the mountain counters simply by changing the conditions of presence. The thin mountain air literally starves false power. A demon might arrive with roaring fire, but thin mountain air denies the flame fuel. A demon might arrive puffing with pride, but altitude sickness makes pride dizzy. A demon might bring a massive legion of followers, but guess what? A narrow, winding mountain pass renders those vast numbers completely meaningless. The mountain expertly uses literal and metaphorical thin air to starve out the inflated egos and flashy pyrotechnics of demonic kings. Section 5. A Parliament of Nature. It's really incredible to realize why the 72 demons, despite their immense, terrifying power, struggle so much against Tharos. See, demons specialize in single domains. Some govern knowledge, some war, some love, some ruin. But Tharos Venn is so incredibly dangerous because the mountain acts as a parliament of nature. It gathers many natural laws all at once. As we see in the Spinor Accord, Tharos's allies are formidable. You've got Oryn Khar, master of rivers, because rivers are born from mountain snow, Sylvithest, master of forests, which gather right at the mountain's feet, Ver, master of roots, who literally holds the slopes together, and Oryn Khar, master of stone. When a demon opposes one mountain, they aren't fighting a single isolated entity.
They're picking a fight with an impenetrable, ancient defense blending stone, root, river, and sky. The mountain is an awe-inspiring coalition of elements wearing one single body.
And finally, Section 6, Confronting Demonic Crowns.
Now, as a mountain scholar tracking these ancient cosmic shifts, I have to say the practical case studies of these clashes between ancient stone and demonic kings are just the most compelling part of this whole explainer. Let's look at a specific interaction with Belial. Belial had gifted his demonic fire, an ember, to the human Oryn Khar. When Belial realizes Tharos Venn is interfering, he actually confronts the mountain master in a valley at sunset, just radiant with restrained fire. Belial says he gave Oryn power because the mortal impressed him, and in response, Tharos Venn just simply delivers this devastating critique of unearned power. Then you gave him a peek before teaching him the climb. This perfectly illustrates how the mountain holds true power over demonic vanity. Belial doesn't fear mountains in the traditional sense, but he deeply, deeply dislikes them because they do not react correctly to his majesty. Entire cities panic when Belial approaches, courts bow, low-ranked demons scatter in terror. But mountains, they just remain mountains. When Tharos speaks to Belial, Belial flashes his terrifying smile, but the snow around his feet simply refuses to melt. Natural power doesn't hate Belial, it just flat out refuses to exaggerate him. And to a demonic crown, that calm lack of reaction is an almost unbearable insult. Next, we have an absolutely incredible interaction with Bael, the first king. Bael is arguably the demon most offended by mountain philosophy. His entire doctrine depends on sequence. He is first in the list, first among kings, first in authority. He demands recognition based entirely on rank. When Bael appears as a crowned shadow beneath 3 animal forms, demanding the mountain recognize him as the first king, Tharos answers from the summit cloud with this really profound truth. First is a place in a line. Height is a burden in the world. What's staggering about this is how Tharos Venn answers sequence with altitude. Bael firmly believes that being first grants him superiority. But the mountain asks, if you stand above others, do you protect them from storms? Or do you merely cast a much larger shadow over them? Bael's messengers test the mountain, and the echoes literally repeat Bael's title until the word king sounds less like power and more like a question. This wounds Bael deeply, teaching the first king that true height isn't about superiority, it is entirely about accountability. For the very first time, a demon king realizes that not all resistance is rebellion. Some resistance is just older than obedience. Ultimately, when Oryn Khar finally completes his grueling ascent, Tharos doesn't hand him a new magical flame, or an army, or some grand command. He gives him a simple stone from the summit, cold on one side, warm on the other. He tells him to carry it when demonic crowns argue. It acts as a tool of measurement. Tharos basically says, if it grows heavy, someone is rising without earning the height. The mountain becomes the ultimate standard of measurement in the coming wars. Every single being that claims power must now be measured against height, burden, endurance, and consequence. As we wrap up our study of Tharos Venn and natural law today, I want to leave you with the exact same question Tharos asked Oryn Khar right before allowing him to reach the summit. It is such a profound check on ambition. The mountain doesn't promise anyone victory in the dark wars to come, but it does promise that nothing false can stand forever. So think about the powers, the leaders, the structures in our own world. Are they rising by actually earning the climb, or are they just inflated by temporary shadows? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. And as always, keep your eyes on the horizon.